Uh, Recently, Zero Hedge put out this chart showing the level of U.S. gold imports. Now, a lot of you have probably heard about the the gold that's been coming over from the London Bullion Exchange and over to the COMEX vault. And there's record deliveries of gold and silver coming out of COMEX. So the question is, who is buying all this physical gold in the U.S.? It is. I can tell you that in the 30 plus years that I've been investing in gold and gold mining stocks, I've never seen anything like this, and I think it's a prelude to something much bigger that's going on personally, and it's just something really important to note. A lot of physical gold coming to the U.S. Let's go on to the next. So today, President Trump signed an executive order to establish a strategic Bitcoin reserve. This was a campaign promise. I mean, we saw him kind of promise it as Cramer was interviewing him on CNBC, and yet executive order is supposed to be budget neutral, so it can't incur any. If they're going to buy Bitcoin according to this order, it can't incur any greater deficits. It has to be budget neutral. And yet there is another bill that has been pending from Senator Cynthia Lummis. That's called the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve Act, or the Bitcoin Act, I believe it's called. But what's important to note is that there is likely to be a follow-on congressional act that is going to similarly codify this strategic Bitcoin reserve. And there's something really important to understand about this act. Let's go on to the next. And that is, it is, in my opinion, and pretty clearly so, from Section 9 of Senator Lummis's Bitcoin Reserve Act, I think this act is really a red herring for gold. I think Bitcoin is a red herring for gold across the entire Trump administration, and the bigger grand agenda that we believe the administration has with respect to gold. So, what is a red herring? A red herring is a false clue or a distraction from the main point. And so if Bitcoin is the red herring and gold is the main point, why does this strategic Bitcoin reserve, what does it have to do with that? And I'm just going to read this so we can all understand it here together. Section 9C of Senator Lummis's bill, and it's getting a lot of traction, and there is very likely to be this follow-on bill in the wake of this executive order. It says, not later than 100 days after the date of enactment of this act, the Federal Reserve banks shall tender all outstanding gold certificates in their custody to the Secretary, the Treasury Secretary, that is, not later than 90 days after the tender of the last such certificate. The Secretary shall issue new gold certificates to the Federal Reserve banks that reflect the fair market value price of the gold held against such certificates by the Treasury as of the date specified by the Secretary on each new gold certificate. Upon issue by the Secretary, each Federal Reserve bank that receives a new gold certificate shall remit, get that right there, shall remit the difference in cash value between the old and new gold certificates to the Treasury, to the Secretary, for deposit in the general fund. That's the Treasury general account within 90 days. So what does this mean? Hidden within this Bitcoin Reserve Act is a requirement that the government does the gold mark to market. So gold currently is valued at the Fed and on the books of the U.S. Treasury at just $42.22 an ounce, something like that. It's a holdover from the Nixon days when he took us off the gold standard. And so what does this mean? There's a mandated revaluation that will create, that if we mark to market at current gold prices, would create something like an $800 billion unrealized gain on the books of the Treasury. And so, well, I mean, so what, you might say? I mean, everyone knows that gold is valued closer to $2,900 an ounce today, not $42 an ounce. So, why does this matter? Well, what would be mandated here is that the Federal Reserve shall remit the difference in this value directly to the Treasury general account. The $800 unrealized gain will be monetized. It's like a repo of the gold. Yes, it's somewhat of a gimmick. Let's admit it. It's somewhat of a gimmick, but it's an $800 billion QE mandated as part of the Bitcoin Reserve Act. So the act basically obligates the government to buy $20 billion worth of Bitcoin over something like 4 or 5 years, $20 billion per year. And yet, hidden within this obligation to buy $20 million per year of Bitcoin is an $800 billion QE and mark to market of gold. I believe it sets the stage for a bigger strategy of the administration with gold, a plan to devalue the dollar relative to gold over time, and potentially as part of a bigger grand bargain, a new Bretton Woods arrangement that Treasury Secretary Bessent has talked about, and something akin to a Mar-a-Lago Accord, the bigger grand bargain that we believe the Trump administration is positioning for right now with the tariffs and all of the various aspects of Trump's negotiating strategy. I think we are going to see something like a Mar-a-Lago Accord with the world leaders coming together with President Trump, probably sometime in April, and there's a bigger play with respect to a potential establishment of longer dated swaps for longer dated Treasury bonds among our allies and trading partners of existing Treasuries, potentially even swaps of gold, particularly with respect to Europe and our NATO allies, and in return for these 100-year century bonds, military bonds. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has talked about these military bonds, and a bigger plan to devalue the dollar relative to gold. I believe this is all in the works. These are some of the signs. Bitcoin is a red herring for gold, I strongly believe, and this is why. I think you're going to see much more. So